So do you think immortality is worth it in Diablo Immortal? Today in this video, we're going to take a look at all of the positives and the negatives of being the Immortals. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Captain Nemo. Welcome to another Diablo Immortal video. Today, we're going to be talking about immortality, wrapping a three-part series with a review, the positives and the negatives of being the Immortal, and whether it's really worth your time. Just before we get started, remember to smash the like button, hit the subscribe, and stay tuned to the latest Diablo Immortal content right here on Scrappy Academy. Oh, and remember, if you don't know the Immortals, how to be an Immortal, or some of these terms that I'm using, the two other videos that give you all of the details will be up top. You can check them out. That's part 1 and 2. This right here is the third part where I give you all of my own personal opinions about it. And of course, at the end of the video, I'm also going to tell you about my experience as the Immortal as well. Alright, so let's talk about the positives as the Immortal. What are some of the rewards that you get, right? For example, you get weekly gold, health, and legendary gear delivered to you every week if you can keep it in the vault. So again, it'll be in the other videos where I talk about this, but the vault holds all of that stuff, and if the shadows can't steal it, or if you defend it as the Immortal, you get to keep it. It gets spread between all of the Immortals. So you get some weekly gold, you get also hills, tons of different hills that you can get and use on different items, I should say. And then of course you get your legendary gear or a pick, 3 items from the vault that could be delivered to you every week, which is really nice as the Immortal. Now, if you're the Immortal Elite or higher, you get to participate in Keon's Ordeal, which is a 48-person raid that gets set up by the Immortals. Only the Immortals can participate, and only if you're Elite or higher. But if you do, there's a weekly crest, a legendary crest that you can get, as well as a whole bunch of legendary gear that you can get every time you run it. Now, you can only run it once per day, and that legendary crest is capped per week. With the rest of the legendary gear you can get every time you run Keon's Ordeal. It's a nice little thing for the Immortals as well. Another thing is Corpus Expedition, which is sort of like a shadow assembly, but for the Immortals. But in this case, you get to run an activity. Of course, I'll link it for you up top. There's a video, but you get to run an activity, and at the end of it, you get aspirant keys, which is another reward for the Immortals. You get to do this 3 times a week. Then you also get your daily hilts from defending the vault, and you also get them from doing your Immortal dailies as well. As the Immortal, you get access to the Hilts Trader. There's an Immortal tab in there, which will open up a whole bunch of items for you as you progress the Immortal ages. And one of those items, for example, is another legendary crest that you can buy once per month for 1600 hilts. On top of that, there's a bunch of other stuff in there as well, like legendary gear and etc. That's the Immortal tab of the Hilts Trader. Of course, only available if you're the Immortal. Another thing that only is available to the Immortals, of course, is the access to the Hall of Ascension. This is where all of the Immortals live, and a lot of the Immortal activities start right there in the Hall of Ascension, only available to the Immortals. They have their own banner as well, which is nice and can be set up right there next to the, right in the center of the Hall of Ascension, next to the Eternal Crown. You'll be able to set the Immortal banner. That's nice. You also get a statue. The Immortal himself gets a statue right there right next to, in fact, right in front of the Hall of Ascension. And the Wall of Honor, which displays the Immortal and the 4 lieutenants, is really nice. Plus, the Immortals get to write their name in the history books of the server. They will always be there forever. They'll be known as they were the Immortals. So you get to sort of like put your name into the history. All of the Immortals also get a cosmetic set that you get to put on yourself. And then once you progress to, I believe it's Silver 2 age, you unlock even cooler ones. So there's 2 cosmetic sets for the Immortals, as well as the capes. If you see some of the Immortals running around, they have a cape behind them. So every Immortal soldier gets a cape. There's a different kind of cape for the Elite. The lieutenants get their own cape, so there's 4 of them, and then 1 eternal cape, like the big one for the Immortal, which has those wings in it. And last but not least, of course, with those capes and the actual crowns for the lieutenants and the Immortal himself, you also get a buff that you can activate, which will actually work for all of the allies. So the Immortal himself, as well as all of the lieutenants, get their own buff. So an extra buff that has like a 30-minute cooldown, I believe, that they can activate, which will execute a whole bunch of different things. Again, I talk about that in my other video, but they get a buff as well. So those are really all of the positives for the Immortals, the activities that you get to participate in, as well as some of the rewards that you get to pick up as the Immortal. And you would say, that's pretty good, Nemo. That's not bad. Well, yes and no. So the Shadows have a lot of these rewards, to be honest with you, as well. They're just tied to different activities. but you could also get the legendary crest. You could also get your legendary gear. Maybe it's not as easily accessible. You don't get the hilts delivered to you. You actually have to sort of like work for them, but you also have to work for them as the Immortal anyway. On top of that, some of the cool rewards like the Eternal Crowns or the buffs I was telling you about, or maybe even the capes that you want. The coolest ones are of course only for the Immortal. The statue is only for the Immortal. The Wall of Honor is only for the Lieutenant. You know, there's specific things within the Immortals that are only for specific people. So are there really a lot of positives for being the Immortal? Well, there are. I mean, there are some positives, but there's also tons of positives for being a shadow. Now let's talk about what are the negatives, right? Because with every positive, there's a negative. So what are some of the things that are really annoying when it comes to the Immortals? Well, first, let's talk about time commitment. So as the Immortal, you have a lot more stuff that's added to you on the daily basis. So besides doing your bounties, which you normally do as the adventurer, right? Besides doing your dungeons and etc., now you have to do those Immortal dailies. And remember, the dailies are tied in to the rest of the Immortals. It's not really no longer all about yourself, like when you're a shadow or a new adventurer. If you miss something, you might not go up on level, you might miss a bounty, but you're not going to affect anybody else. As an Immortal, you do. As an Immortal, you have to do your dailies, and those dailies are tied into basically contribution points. Again, you can look at my other video if you really want more details, but the contribution points and the dailies let the Immortals progress higher and higher. So everybody has to do their dailies and all of their stuff in order for the Immortals to reach their maximum rank. And remember, the Immortals by design sort of are kind of designed to fail, right? Their group buffs, their maximum group buffs are a lot lower than the shadows. So eventually the shadows will get much stronger than the Immortals. But in order for the Immortals to actually even get to be strong at all, they have to push and do it all together. You say, okay, you have to do your dailies. Not bad, they're not so bad, right? You have to do some challenge rifts, you'll do an elder rift, you might have to do 2 or 3 bounties, you know, you're doing them anyways, right? You might have to like enchant, you know, break down some dust or do a few dungeons. Those are really the Immortal dailies. It's just extra things that you might have to do or extra things you have to think about. And those things you can't miss, because if you do, you'll hurt the entire Immortal faction. That's a lot of commitment, but there is more. Let's talk about this vault. Now, again, I talk in a lot greater detail about it in my other video. I'll link it for you up top. But the vault holds Essentia, which is essential for you to progress your reign. You need Essentia to activate Keon's Ordeal, to progress your dominance, to do a bunch of stuff. The vault is what holds the Essentia. It also holds your hilts, your gold. It holds those legendary items that you might want at the end of the week as your weekly Immortal reward. All of that stuff is held in this vault. And the vault can be accessed by both the Immortals and the Shadows between 12 and 2 p.m. and 7 and 9 p.m. every day. So if you're the Immortal and you want your rewards and you want to run Keon's Ordeal and you want to progress your reign, you want to do all of that cool stuff, you're going to need to watch the vault for those times. That's 4 hours per day that multiple people, it's not just like one person, there has to be multiple teams of Immortals. They have to sit there and watch the vault, wait for the alarm to ring, go in and take out the Shadows if you want to keep your stuff in there. That's how it works. And this vault, it's 7 days per week. There's no holidays, there is no breaks, there's nothing. It just happens all of the time. So that's 4 hours per day just for this activity. And again, the way it is designed right now, and we've talked about this, we've complained about this to Blizzard many times, it's a really big pain point for the Immortals. One of the biggest issues for me is the idea of the vault and how it's disorganized. There's really no rhyme or reason. There's no queue system. There is no organization whatsoever. All of it falls back onto the Immortal leadership. You have to do it, which takes tons and tons of time, because what ends up happening is it becomes like a spam fest. You know, in order for you to defend the vault properly, in order for you to have the teams and etc., you need to have some strategy, right? You need to do it right. It can't just be a spam fest of people going in. Long story short, the vault is an extremely painful thing about the Immortals, because there is no organization, there is no queue system, and you have to do it 4 times per day, every day, no matter what. If you want to keep your stuff, you can choose not to defend the vault, but if that happens, you're not going to be Immortal for long. Okay, so we just talked about that. We have the Immortal dailies that we have to do. Got it. We have to defend the vault 4 hours per day. So, in 2 sessions between 12 and 2 and between 7 and 9 p.m. Okay, what else do you have to do? Well, you also have to run Keon's Ordeal, right? Keon's Ordeal is a 48-person raid that actually secures Daidasa's blessing for the Immortals. Diablo's Blessing is what you would need if you wanted to run your Elder Rifts and get aspirant keys from them. So, long story short, if the Immortals are able to defeat or actually beat Keon's Ordeal, they get a whole bunch of dominance, which is what progresses your reign into the higher Immortal Ages. But on top of that, you also secure Diablo's Blessing. So that's the case if we have the blessing. When any of the Immortals and the Adventurers run Elder Rifts, they pick up extra aspirant keys at the end of them with this blessing. But more importantly, we gain dominance. So it's really important to do Keon's Ordeal. But again, Keon's Ordeal costs money. It also has a maximum of 48 players. And as you progress in your ages higher and higher, you're able to unlock higher difficulties for Keon's Ordeal. And the higher the difficulty, the more times you can run it. So as the Immortal, you can only participate in one Keon's Ordeal per day. So, but if you can unlock, let's say, difficulty 3, that means you can run 3 Keon's Ordeals per day. It depends on what the difficulty is. Difficulty 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 4, and etc. So at difficulty 4, you're able to execute 4 Keon's Ordeals per day. It does cost a lot more Essentia, of course, to run difficulty 4 versus difficulty 1. At the end of the day, at 1, you can only run 48 people. Out of the 300 Immortals, only 48 will be able to participate, will be able to get the rewards, will be able to get any of that stuff. So there's actually lots of drama that gets created here as well, right? Until you progress the reign high enough to participate and let all of the Immortals play, you're going to have to sit there and figure out which ones are going to be doing it. You're going to have to maybe figure out a queue. Who is going to get their weekly rewards? How many times can you run Keon's Ordeal? On top of that, the same way as in the Vault, there's no queue. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason. You have to figure it out yourself, how to do this, how to organize the 48 people, how to put them in teams, how to put them in different... I mean, it's really frustrating. Another thing that we told Blizzard, we really need a queue system in the Vault as well as Keon's Ordeal. It is absolute madness and just a total mess. It takes so much time to run it, to execute it. And when you have more of those, imagine when you have 4 Keon's Ordeals per day, when you're running almost 200 Immortals that you have to organize and execute and put on teams and make sure everybody's in the right place to make sure you do it, on top of the Vault and the dailies. Okay, so we got all of that. That does actually seem like a lot of work, huh? It does. It really does. It stacks up. Your dailies, your Vaults, then you have to do your Keon's Ordeal. We're going to talk about drama and management and all that in just a little bit, but there's also the Rite of Exile, right? The Rite of Exile, which happens every Sunday. If the shadows get to the right stage, they can basically challenge you, right? And try to come in and take your immortality before you can get anywhere even further. So on Sundays, on top of everything else that you're doing, you have to coordinate and make sure that you have 80 people, 80 people spread out and ready in 10 different teams, ready to go in and basically defend the immortality. Because if the shadows reach a certain stage and they're able to execute or, basically initiate the Rite of Exile, it means you're going to get challenged on Sunday, and you need to prepare a team of 80 people, the top Immortals that you can get together in specific teams and etc. to get them in to go fight for immortality. Because otherwise, if you don't and if you lose, you're not going to be immortal anymore. So there's that on top of everything that you're doing, on top of your daily stuff like your bounties and your regular grinding and your dungeons and your events and your zone activities and the regular gear grind that you're doing and the challenge rifts pushing and the PvP that you're doing and all of that. On top of all of this, this is where all of those immortal activities get on top of sort of like everything. So they stack up really. And that is just if you're a regular immortal or you're an elite, just show up and kind of do your things. That's the workload that you can expect. When you're the immortal himself, the officers, the lieutenants, and any kind of leadership of this, it's absolutely insane. It takes so much time. It is literally a job for somebody to do it. And if you want to do it right, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a job. And on top of that, you have to deal with politics and drama. There's tons and tons of politics and drama. And if you don't do it the right way, the immortals are going to fail. You have to be a just leader, but on top of that, you also have to deal with tons and tons of issues and problems. You have to deal with lots of politics because this faction is designed to basically be a political nightmare. It really is. Because, like, for example, there's contribution points in the Immortals, right? There's like a little leaderboard. Depending on what you do as the Immortal, you can get higher on the leaderboard. And the higher people on the leaderboard have basically a higher chance of getting something from the Vault. So for example, if there's like a really cool triple stat item in the vault and more than one person wants it, the people with the highest contribution are the ones that get it. So it creates this whole other thing where people are trying to do these other points and trying to get on top of other immortals so they can get better gear. It creates a whole bunch of drama and issues that way. Keon's Ordeal is only a 48-person raid at the start. You really have to progress your immortality to a high enough level in order to even allow enough immortals in your faction to be able to pick up the weekly reward, that legendary crest. You know what I mean? Everybody wants it, but only the elites or higher are able to participate, and you can only run it if you have the Essentia. So again, all of that together creates lots and lots of politics and drama. Some people are going to be pissed off that they can't run in the first Keon's Ordeal, but you can only put in 48, so what can you really do, you know? You don't have enough Essentia, you didn't progress high enough. That's going to cause a lot of people to be pissed off, because they're not going to be able to run Keon's Ordeal and get their Immortal daily and pick up all of the stuff that they need to get the high enough contribution points to get that cool triple stat that they want at the end of the week, and somebody else will. And you as the Immortal will have to let them in or not let them in. And of course that overall just creates so much drama. And that's just Keon's, right? On top of that, you have, of course, the vault. You have to deal with that, with people spamming the vault, trying to get more contribution points, or some people not doing the vault at all, and then your stuff and getting stolen. So you as the Immortal have to run in there every day, or the officer or the lead or anybody who's actually managing it, right, would have to run there to make sure they check there's somebody watching the vault for 4 hours a day. That's a lot of work. On top of that, again, politics, issues all start stacking up on top of each other. Oh, I wasn't in this Keon's Ordeal. Oh, you didn't put me into the vault. Oh, I'm not going to be in the Rite of Exile, and on and so forth. There's a lot of issues. It's 300 people that you're or 299 people that you're managing. So finally, we got all of the positives and the negatives of being the Immortal. So I want to hear from you down below. Let me know, do you think that immortality is worth it? You know all of the positives and you've seen the truckload of negatives that I just talked about. Let me know down below if you think you still would want to be Immortal. Do you think it's worth it? I'd love to find out and hear from you. So personally, I'm the Immortal on the server, right? I led the Scrappy Echoes into Immortality. We're kind of doing all this stuff together, and I do not think it's worth it. All of the negatives completely outweigh the positives of being Immortal. I mean, even if you are Immortal, most of those things like the statue and the Wall of Honor and even the buffs and all of that, you really don't get, right? And even if you do get them, it's really not that big of a deal. The buff is on a 30-minute cooldown. I mean, it's good in the Rite of Exile or if you're doing Keon's Ordeal, etc. But it only lasts at start like 15 seconds, you know? When you progress it, you can probably get it at 20 or 30 seconds. But there's, again, a 30-minute cooldown on that, so it's not that big of a deal. The statue, I mean, who cares? The Wall of Honor, not really a big of a deal either. The amount of commitment that you have to put into being the Immortal really do not outweigh, I mean, you don't really get that much back. Now, there is a positive of the lore, right? This is what I like about the Immortality. As the protector of Sanctuary itself, you have to think that immortality isn't really about a positive. It's actually a burden that someone has to carry in order, again, to protect Sanctuary from hell itself. So in the lore aspect of it, it makes sense, right? The Immortals are there as the guardians of Sanctuary to go fight and do all of that. But in practicality, or in execution, I should say, most people don't care about the lore. They mostly care about the rewards, right? They want to know what they get for being the best on the server because they think that the Immortal is the best on the server. And I really don't think it is designed that way. The top player on the server, I don't think is going to hold Immortal because there's just not enough time for you to grind and do all the things you need to do to be the top player. You'll be stuck dealing with drama, with people complaining they weren't in Keon's and on and so forth. So personally, I don't think being Immortal or being even the Immortal is worth it. It's just a bunch of work and you don't really get too many things back for it. Now, some people might play a lot, might play 16 plus hours a day, and to them it makes sense because there's just extra things that they can do. But remember, you're definitely going to have to be grinding and making sure that you spend a lot of money too as well, because as the Immortal, I think it's probably one of the top things that you have to do. Being on top of things, you just don't have enough time to grind. So now there are some people who play 16 plus hours a day and they need more things to do in the game. So to them, maybe immortality is worth it, right? Maybe to them that makes sense, but To me, I feel like all of the extra things that you need to do, there's really almost no positives to being immortal, and I would say it's not worth it. Just my opinion. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.